This component is one of the later additions to the Quasar component family. And when it first came along, I couldn't believe that Quasar went the extra mile again to make loading cases even easier for us. So the QSkeleton component basically makes it easier to show that a component is currently loading data. And the cool thing about it is it shows you the layout of the page before the data has even been fetched. And the cool thing about that is that users can know what the page will be like so they can get ready to interact with it before the data has even been fetched. So I think this is a really cool idea. And if you have the resources and the time, I highly recommend using skeletons in your application. They are a fantastic experience for the user. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Q-skeleton component. And notice that I don't have any of the flex related stuff on our page here. So save that, and there we go. By default, we just get this normal rectangle, and we can see it's loading. It might be hard for you to tell in the video, but we've got a little bit of an effect inside of this rectangle, which shows that it's loading. Okay, what else can we do here? We can say class is equal to background-indigo, or any color for that matter, if we want to give it a little bit of color. Another thing we can do is change the type, and we have a lot of types available to us. I'm just going to show you some of the main ones. By default, we've got rect, which is a rectangle. And we can also say text. So when we're replacing text, this is a really good skeleton for text. We can say circle for anything circular. But then there's a few other ones that are circular, like the Q avatar, which I'll show you in a second. Now, some components like Q-button we can throw in there. We can say Q chip. Oh, Q chip. There we go. We can say Q toolbar to show that a toolbar is loading. We can say Q slider. And two more, we've also got Q input and Q avatar as well. So Q avatar, which is just going to give us a circle. But anyway, you probably want to see these in context, so I will show you them in context later on in this video. All right, let's say animation speed now to see how we can change the animation speed inside of the skeleton. So we'll go back to a rectangle by just removing that type there. And we'll say animation-speed. And this is in milliseconds. So let's set it to something like 300. And this animation speed is faster, so it might give the feeling that the page is loading a little bit faster. So you can set that to something like, I don't know, maybe 800 actually. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Another thing we can do is change the animation itself. So by default, the animation is going to be equal to wave, but we've got a few others like pulse, meaning it's going to pulse in and out. We've also got pulse X, meaning it only pulses on the X-axis, and pulse Y, which means it only pulses on the Y-axis. We've also got fade, so we get a little bit of a fade in and out. And then we've got blink, which is kind of similar to fade. And the last one that we have is none at all, which means we don't get any animation. It just shows you a gray bar to represent loading. Okay, but I'll bring us back to wave because I think that is the best example. So since that's the default, I can remove this. We've also got square, which is going to square off the borders. Basically, a lot of Quasar API stuff that you often get for things like cards. We can also say here, bordered. And that's going to be hard to see in this situation. As you can kind of see it like a little bit around the edge there. And then we can also say width to set the width on here. For example, 300 pixels. And then, of course, we can also set the height. So let's set that to something like 100 pixels. That's about it for the API, but to wrap this video up, I want to show you an example where we might actually use QSkeleton because it really shines when you see it in the real world. So let's create a Q card component, and this is going to have no skeleton, and then we'll add it in afterwards. I'm going to set the style of this equal to max width 300 pixels. I like to have max widths on my card. It gives me a little bit more idea of what it's going to look like in the final result. And then inside of here, we can have a Q. We might have a Q item actually, Q-item. I'm stealing this directly from the docs, by the way. Q-item section inside of that item. And the reason we're using an item here is because items are really easy to style. So I know we're outside of a list right now, but sometimes you'll see items being used in things like cards because these item sections give us some really nice styling power and it makes it really easy to position things. So let's come up here and then say avatar. And then for the avatar, I'm going to say Q-avatar. And then I'm just going to give this a color equal to primary. And I'll just go L to basically represent my name. So let's also say class is equal to text dash white, and that looks good. The next thing I want to do is add my name and then what I do on the right side here. See if you can guess what I do. Q-item-section, and then we can say Q-item-label to really easily style a label. And I'm going to set the type of the second label, because I want two labels here, equal to a caption. So for the first one, I'll put my name in, Luke Diebold, and what do? You guessed it, I'm a web developer. Save it, and there we go. Now, I want this to appear on the other side, so let's just say class is equal to text dash right. Cool. Next, let's add an image inside of here. So I'll come down and say Q dash image. Oops, and I want to make sure I'm not inside the item. So let's jump out of the item. Here we go. And we'll set the source here equal to picsum.photos/300 by 150. There we go. So that's whacked an image in there. Then we'll have a Q-card-actions. Q-button. We'll set the label equal to 1, and we'll make this flat, because usually action buttons are going to be flat. And I might come up here and say align is equal to right. I think that's how I do it. Yeah, there we go. Let's add another button in here, and this one will have a label equal to 2. And there you go. We got buttons as well. So you could style this more, but I think this will do for now. You get the idea. We've got a card, and basically we want to make it look like this card is loading. So what I'll do is I'm going to copy this entire card. So I'm copying the whole card here. We'll create a comment called card skeleton, so I can easily find this section, and then we'll just paste that directly inside of there. So we've got two versions of the card now. And basically we're going to skeletonize this card. I figured Dockerize is a word, so how about we create a new word, which is skeletonize. So now let's come in here and say Q-skeleton instead of an avatar. And then I'll just say that the type is equal to Q-avatar. And we can get rid of the L now. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. So that's working for the avatar. Next, we'll move on to this section here. And if you remember, we have a skeleton for text. So let's say Q-skeleton. And I'll set the type equal to text. Now it works, so I'll copy paste that down. And actually, let's cut this one out and throw it there. There we go, one for the top label, one for the bottom label. So that's the top section done. How about the image? Well, in this case, I reckon we can just do a Q-skeleton. We don't need a source anymore, and we know it's 300 width, 150 height. So we can say width is equal to 300 pixels, and then height is equal to 150 pixels. And there we go, we've got a loading section for the image. And the last thing we'll do is the actions. Instead of a Q button, we say Q-skeleton. By the way, I'll show you how I did that. If I select Q button, Control D, then it selects the next occurrence of Q button. So now I can just start writing Q-skeleton, and it writes in both of those places. We're not going to need the label, and we're not going to need flat. So I might just be able to do that. And then I'll click there, Alt click there, space, type is equal to Q-button. Oh no, what is it? It's Q button like that, I believe. Yeah, there we go. I think I want to have a gutter here though. So let's say class is equal to Q-gutter-small, something like that. Yeah, so now it looks like this is loading. It's basically the equivalent of this, but in a loading state. How cool is that? All right, so what we can do is say const loading is equal to a ref, and we're going to yank ref out of view, and we'll set this equal to true by default. And then I can say set timeout to basically mimic fetching data from the back end, and we'll say, hey, in 3 seconds, I want you to set loading equal to false. So loading.value, we'll set that equal to false. Now what we can do is come up here and say v-if it is not loading. So if we already have the data, I want you to show the original card, scrolling down, and then here we can say v-else. All right, so if it's loading, we show that. Otherwise, we get the original card. So how cool is that? And of course, you'd probably want this to be in its own file. So I would put all of my cards and stuff like that in its own file. And especially if you had like a folder structure where you have a folder for your cards or a folder for a specific type of card, you could then just sit the skeleton next to that. And I would name it something similar. So maybe this card is named something like user details card, something like that. So user details card dot view. And then for the skeleton, I'd say user details card skeleton dot view. So it's really obvious that the skeleton goes with that card. So there you have it. That is Quasar's skeleton component. Let's look at it one more time because it's so beautiful. Oh, I love it. So that's Quasar's QSkeleton component. I hope you enjoyed this one. I really loved it, and I'll see you in the next video where we explore something else.